Okay, let's give us something more fun to interact with than just this cube that doesn't actually do anything. And that thing will be doors. For the mesh of the doors, we're going to be using the one provided in the starter content. If you open starter content, props, we have a SM door and an SM door frame. Before we use them, we can drag them out in the world right now. You'll notice that, well, the SM door frame is fine. The SM door, for some reason, doesn't actually come with a collision. We can walk right through it. And if it doesn't have a collision, that means we can't interact with it with a line trace either. So we have to add our own collision. Luckily, we can do that inside our UE4 engine. We don't have to open it in Blender or Maya or anything like that. So let's double click the SM door. And if we click here up in collision and choose simple collision, we can see nothing's changed. And this proves that we don't have a collision. Let's leave it on actually. So if we go up here to collision, we can choose add box simplified collision. And now we get this green box that is our collision, and it automatically fits it to the lengths of the mesh. If we look at it from top view though, change it to top view, and I'm going to change this back to lit, it extends it to the doorknobs as well. And I don't want it as far as the doorknobs, since we're just working with a simple collision right now. I don't want it to come out that far. So we're going to decrease it just a bit. So if we scroll down here in the details panel, under collision, primitives, boxes, see it says one array elements because we just added one, and open it up. We can change this X extent to 5. As you can see, that is the X extent of the door. So the doorknobs will not have collision, but that's okay with me. Now if we hit play again, you can see we can no longer walk through our door, and our interaction system will pick it up. So let's make the actual actor for our door here. So let's open blueprints, actors, and we want to make a child of this BP interaction actor. We can actually make a new folder, and we will call this interaction, just so we can organize specifically our interaction actors inside this folder. So right click, create child blueprint class, and instead of child, we'll call this door. So BP interaction actor door. And I'm actually going to remove the actor part of this just to make it a little cleaner. It doesn't take as much space. Great. So we can open that up. And instead of our cube, we want this to be our door frame. Great. And we can click this yellow arrow right here to reset it to its default material, M-frame. And obviously we need a second mesh for the door. So we'll add a component, and we'll search for static mesh. And we'll make it a child of our cube, which we can rename if we want. So not all of them is called cube, and we'll just call it static mesh. So now it's called static mesh, and we'll have to rename this one. Static mesh 1. And we'll make it a child again. Compile and save. Now for this static mesh, we want to add our door. And it's a little off-centered because that's just how the pivot points are. So we have to move this 45 units on the Y, if I remember correctly. Yes, that is correct. And that's how we properly center that. So in our event graph here, we want to right-click on the interact. This actor already has the BPI interface. It says no interfaces here. But that's because it takes it from the BPI or BP interaction actor, because this is the parent of this, which is why we still get the function right here. So we can right click and implement function. So when we interact with this, it will do something else. So we can print a string, and we can say now we're interacting with a door. Compile and save. And we can delete these meshes right here and just drag in our actor. When we hit play, if we interact with our interaction actor, it says the original. We hit our interaction actor. And if we interact here, now we're interacting with the door. Just show you how it works. So let's delete that print string and let's change it to a timeline. And we'll call this open door TL for timeline. So let's open this up. And first thing we want to do is change the length. This is in seconds. So this is how long we want it to take for the door to open. I usually go for something like 0.2 seconds or 0.25, but since this is a horror game, I like it a little slower, such as 0.5. So we want to add a float track, and we're going to call it alpha. And we right click, and we want to add 2 keys. Now we want this to go from 0 to 1 over our half a second. So let's take our first key, and let's set the time to 0. And let's change the value also to 0. So second key, the time is 0.5, so the end of our timeline, and our value is 1. Now this goes way off the screen, so we can't access it anymore, but we can fix that by clicking these 2 icons, which will zoom to fit horizontally and vertically. Now if we select both and right click, we can change this from a linear interpolation to an auto interpolation. This will give it a much smoother and a much more natural feel. You'll almost always want this kind of interpolation over a linear. So let's go back in the event graph. So we need to translate this graph into the door opening. So on the update, we want to rotate this static mesh by 90 degrees. So if we just rotate in here 90 degrees on the z-axis, that's what we want it to do over the course of 0.5 seconds. So we can take the static mesh and we want to set the relative rotation, and we can plug that into update. Now we don't want to update all 3 of these. We only want it to rotate on the z-axis. So we can do 2 things. We can either right click and split the struct pin. I'm going to recombine that real quick, or we can drag it off and type make rotator. It's essentially doing the same thing. It's just personal preference most of the time. So we only want to adjust the Z, and we want to adjust it by 90 degrees. Our alpha here goes from 0 to 1. So we're going to do this with a lerp, which stands for linear interpolate. And this alpha here also goes from 0 to 1. So we can plug the alpha into the alpha. So over time, this 0 to 1 will translate to this 0 to 1 over 0.5 seconds. And we want it to go from 0 to 90. Or was it negative 90? We can double check real quick to see what we want. Negative 90. Alright. So let's just add a negative 90 in there. So compile and save. So let's go ahead, and our door's already in our scene. Let's hit play. And let's interact with it. Press E, and it opens towards us. Now if we press E again, nothing happens. And that's because we've already opened it, and we didn't set a way to close it yet. So to do that, we need to add a boolean, and we'll call it door closed. We'll call it is door closed. And here on the event interact, we want to ask if the door is closed. Now if it's true, we obviously want to open the door. So we will plug that into play. And if it's false, we want to close the door. So we want to play this in reverse. Luckily, we have a reverse right here. But before these two, we also need to set is door closed to the opposite. So if door closed is false, right before we go to play, we want to set it to true. Oh, my apologies. If it's true, we want to set it to false. And if it is false, we want to set it to true and call the reverse. So now, if we compile and save, hit play, let's go around. And if we hit E on our door, it opens. If we hit E again, it closes. Perfect. And you can kind of tap it and it'll start from the position it's at rather than jumping to the end. And that's because we have it on play in reverse rather than play from start or reverse from end. Lastly, you probably didn't notice because you can't see my fingers, but I had to press E on it twice to open it. If you could hear it right there. And that's because is door closed should be set to true by default, because it is closed by default. So the first time I hit it, it was seeing that it was false, and then it was setting it to true, and it was trying to reverse, but it was already shut, so nothing happened. So now it only takes one hit to open and close it. Perfect. But the only problem with this door is that it always opens in the same way. For on this side, when we press E, it comes towards us. So in the next episode, we're going to be making a version of this door that will always open outwards.